What's up, everybody? Welcome to the God and Country Podcast, episode 6. We're going to be getting into some things today, talking about sexual depravity. I mean, like we said on the last episode, if you didn't listen, I suggest you go ahead and listen to that last episode where we talked about sexual immorality, and we really want to make a difference between that and the way we feel about depravity. Yeah. So on the God and Country Podcast, we're going to be addressing just kind of things that are going on in our nation, and there is some... I don't know the best way to say it. Just it's a real push that we're seeing in society today, leaning towards various wickedness and darkness when it comes to sexual acts, just in general. Mm-hmm. And so we wanted to get into some of those things today. My name is Ethan. That's Daniel. We are the God and Country Podcast. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. So I'm actually going to do this at the front and just say, if you haven't already, subscribe on YouTube, hit the like button. Look for us on social media at GNC Pod on Instagram and Facebook. We're going to get a Twitter eventually. And be sure to give us some feedback. Let us know what you're thinking. Give us a topic or a question or something like that. And definitely give us a shout out if you think that we maybe missed an area in the conversation. We want to know what y'all are thinking as well. So be sure to hit us up there. Daniel, last time we talked about immorality, sexual immorality, as in like any sexual act outside of man and woman married, committing a sexual act, that's sexual immorality, that is sin, any of that. But we wanted to draw a hard line between the way that we feel about homosexuality, and because we don't necessarily agree with that or condone that, we want to draw a hard line between that and the way that we feel about, or the way that we look at, or the way that the church should look at and address the darkness of like pedophilia, child sexual abuse, child molestation, things like that. So just want to toss that up to you, man.
Yeah, and now I've got the definition of depravity pulled up, and it's just moral corruption or wickedness, a wicked or morally corrupt act. And then the third one is specifically in relation to Christian theology. It says the innate corruption of human nature due to original sin. Now, immorality is a synonym to depravity.
Yes.
So I mean, they're similar words. I think particularly kind of we split it up between the two. I think just depravity is a little more of a step further.
Yeah, depravity is a little more malicious.
Yeah.
Whereas immorality,
intent, like with to me, there's like an intent behind it as far as like just the basic definition. Now there is, like Ethan mentioned, there's a lot of pushes going on today. With like we talked about the last episode, kind of towards the end, transgenderism, pushing that in schools, pushing that through drag queen story hours, and then also pedophilia. Now, I do want to make the point that with the LGBTQIA, all those letters, things, I wouldn't want to put a percentage on it because I'm not really sure, but I know most people, as far as it just kind of fall under the basic lesbian, gay, bisexual thing, actually a lot of them kind of are starting to lean away towards the transgender movement a lot, but also they don't, most of them don't push the pedophilia thing. Mm-hmm. I think there's a particularly bigger force.
A particularly darker force.
Yeah. That's pushing more of the pedophilia to make pedophilia an accepted sexual orientation,
right?
Versus a depraved act, which is what it is.
Absolutely.
I mean, the word Jesus was clear. Mark 9:42 says, "Whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him if a great millstone were hung around his neck and were thrown into the sea." Obviously, and then like what you do to the least of these kind of things,
right?
It's wicked. I think like terribly wicked.
Yeah, and when I say depraved, I mean sick.
Yeah,
sick in the head.
It's. So. I mean, there's a whole
hot take.
There's because with a lot of the times with pedophilia, just from some statistics that I've seen, or I've got pulled up actually right now, about 90% of children who are victims of abuse know their abuser. So the abusers go through a process, what's called grooming. And in the process of grooming, what they do is they establish a non-sexual relationship with the parents and the child, to kind of get in like an inner circle type thing.
Mm-hmm.
So they gain the trust of the victims and their families. And then as the relationship grows, they tend to try and seek time alone with the kids. And then they also begin to gradually sexualize the relationship with the child. This says here that the child's cooperation and silence are maintained by various forms of coercion. The child accommodates to increased sexual demands with increasing sense of betrayal and guilt. So they feel like it's almost these people that are going after these children are basically pushing on them like, hey, this is okay. So if you go and tell anybody about it, you're gonna be betraying me, or they're basically making the child feel like it's wrong to say, hey, so and so did this to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so these children are keeping their mouths shut.
Right.
Most perpetrators will continue to abuse children if they're not reported and stopped. Nearly 70% of child sex offenders have between 1 and 9 victims, and at least 20% have 10 to 40. An average child, I didn't read this one earlier. An average serial child molester may have had as many as 400 victims in his lifetime. 400 may have had as many as 4. Oh my God! I mean, that's a large number.
And let me interject here as we keep going down this list. The reason that we're talking about this on the God and Country podcast is because I don't know of anybody who's really standing in the pulpit and saying, "Hey, parents, watch your kids." And it's kind of, we think of it as common sense and stuff, but the numbers don't lie. The number of children being abused, the number of pedophiles that have long running streaks of this crime of abusing children is a lot larger than people addressing it. And we see it on TV and we think like, oh, it's just something that happens on TV. Like, nah, bro.
Yeah, no, it happens, and it's a problem in, particularly Catholic. I kind of,
he's right. But the numbers are higher in the school system than just the Catholic Church system. But just put that out there.
And there's, I'm not saying like it's just the problem of the Catholic Church.
All the Catholics touch kids.
We're
not doing that.
I don't even know how many kids, I can't remember right now, but there's like kids that go into the CPS, like the foster system.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
disappear off the face of the earth. There's numbers.
Gone.
There's I'm sure at least tens of thousands of kids that disappear off the face of the earth.
And that's the government.
They go into the CPS system. Now there's some kind of more theories we can get into about that maybe in a little bit. But
not if we want to keep this episode short.
Yeah, not if we want to keep maybe a later episode we'll get really into some of that stuff.
We have to dedicate one specifically to the disappearings.
Yeah. But anyways, he didn't kill himself.
No, he didn't.
So it's that, like you said, I think that's good that most people would think it's common sense.
It's not.
It's becoming less and less common sense.
Yeah, nowadays. The more rampant it is, it's almost like people forget.
Yeah, well, and the media particularly like Hollywood, and I think there's a reason Hollywood does this, but they are more and more like sexualizing young children.
Yeah.
And they're more and more like propping up these kids. Yeah. And kind of like without specifically saying, hey, we're making them like a sexual icon. They're making them a sexual icon. Right. And so it's like an ingrained thing that's just kind of being pushed in people's heads. I hope that believers are seeing stuff like that and saying, no, that's not right. Changing the channel or not watching that movie or whatever, but it's happening. It's happening in the world, and believers got to be aware enough to fight that.
Because Daniel's going to get into some stuff, right? We're going to talk about some stuff that's going on, like there's just facts and stories, and might even talk about some conspiracies and stuff like that. But when it comes to stuff like this, you gotta, as a believer, normally I want to save this to the end of the episodes. I know we're only 6 episodes in, but normally I like to save the question of how should Christians blah 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 to the end. Yeah. For this one, I'm just going to come out like right here in the in the front. How should Christians address just sexual abuse? I wouldn't even say just child, but just sexual abuse. How do you address that? You got to listen to your spirit.
Yeah.
Because if the Spirit gives you a check about leaving your kid with, at this particular daycare than this one, or, your kid riding the bus over, riding his own bike, or, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
If the Spirit gives you a check, you better go with that check. Better safe than sorry. I mean, I don't, like I have a toddler. She likes dance. We want to put her in gymnastics because of the physical fitness aspect. And, they're dressed scantily, right? Scantily dressed or whatever.
Scantily.
Yeah, well, a lot of skin, because he's wearing a leotard and jumping around on a big old bar. But like, if she makes a career out of it, the kids that have the cheerleading careers, they're like 7, and they're wearing the skimpy outfits from that cheerleaders wear. And it's not. I don't have a problem with that in and of myself. I have a problem with people sitting in the stands that have a problem with pedophilia. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or like looking at it weird, and then I'm like, man, now I have a problem with it. So, but I'm not going to take that away from my kid, but I am going to stay. I'm determined to stay vigilant in myself and in my own spirit and listen for the check. Like, maybe she misses this performance,
yeah,
or maybe she doesn't go to the after party. And then we go meet her, like we drive her over there, and you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Just listen to your spirit, believers.
Yeah. And I think, obviously, I'm in a second. I'll pull up like percentage of like estimated percentage of population of how many people are pedophiles, basically, or and stuff. But for the most part, especially where we live in Texas, I think we can be a little bit more comfortable to think to ourselves that, hey, most people are here to just
see the kids.
Yeah. But to kind of get into like there's some other topics we want to talk about, like rape and different things like that. But it says here, just kind of as far as pedophilia go, there's no known cause of like the pedophilic mindset. Mm-hmm. But there is some evidence that pedophilia may run in families. So it could possibly be genetic material that causes this issue, but it does say though that it is unclear whether this stems from genetics or learned behavior. So
nature versus nurture kind of thing.
Yeah, it could just be that it's happening to these kids,
so they do it too.
So they do it, But in the history of childhood sexual abuse is another potential factor in the development of pedophilia. Although again, it has not been proven, because I think with this particular topic, it's kind of a little bit harder to prove what the causes of that are. Brain scans indicate that pedophiles have less, looks like white matter, the connective circuitry in the brain, and at least one study has shown that they are more likely to have suffered childhood head injuries than non-pedophiles. They've also been shown to be shorter on average and are more likely to be left-handed. Right-handed.
Me too.
And as well as to have,
also we're like 6 feet tall. So.
Also, as there are shown to typically have lower IQs in the general population.
We're really smart. Cool.
Yeah. Sweet. So
we're not pedophiles.
I got a really good score on my SATs.
Hot takes. We're not pedophiles.
So there can be some kind of background things that you can see. In that it does say that pedophiles are more often men than women, although there are, and I've got like some logos and stuff of like, there's groups called like the Man Boy Love Association, and there's like a Boy Lover logo and Little Boy Lover logo and Girl logo, and all these kind of things. And I think that's kind of where it gets into more of like some depraved, like wicked stuff, because these people will like travel the world to go abuse kids in other parts of the world and stuff because they can get away with it.
Yeah.
But so so there's some kind of like background stuff, but and I mean, I think the word is explicitly clear. That I mean, abuse in general is not a good thing.
Right. Abuse is not of God.
Yeah, and we'll, like I said, we'll get into that a little bit, but like specifically, I think because children are so innocent, for the most part, they're not aware.
And if even if they are, they can't defend themselves.
For the most part, that's another statistic I saw, is that about 40% of children who are sexually abused are abused by older or more powerful children.
I've heard that
they can't even fight against the other, the older, more powerful kids, what you think they could do against, adults that
right.
typically should know better, unless, but another thing I saw is that there are around 116,000 searches for child pornography every day. That's wicked.
So wicked. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, in pornography in general, there was a story recently. I can't remember the name of the girl that, I don't remember if the story is that she ran away or she got abducted from home, and she had been missing for like a couple weeks or something like that.
Oh yeah, and then her mom found her.
And then her mom found her because someone found her on a porn website.
Yeah, they found her.
She got trafficked or something and was being raped, and this person was posting it on a like Pornhub or something, some major pornography website. And because those sites are so lax about who can post whatever, there's no telling how many underage kids are.
There's no verification of the people in the video.
Literally, I think to verify your account on Pornhub, to be able to post stuff as a verified account, you have to send a picture of you holding the name of the account, like a piece of paper that has the name written on it, and then a picture of you, and they're like, okay, yeah, you get a blue check mark on Pornhub. So, but this girl got found because whoever abducted her or picked her up while she was running away and was unfortunately abusing her sexually was posting stuff on Pornhub, and somebody recognized her somehow and told her mother.
What an awkward conversation.
Yeah, I was like,
hey girl, I was I was watching porn the other night, and I think you should watch it too.
Yeah, check this video. Yeah. And maybe maybe they reported it to police.
Yeah, I like to think that they just went straight to the police and didn't, say it anonymous.
Yeah. But so that was like, that's a whole story that happens. And that's, luckily, I mean, not luckily, but fortunately for this girl, she was able to kind of get away from that because she was found.
A lot of people don't get found.
There's kids that just disappear. You know what I mean? If you kind of want to go into a little conspiracy hole, like, like the Epstein Island thing. Yeah. That, Disney cruises stopped.
We're going
at Epstein
there.
Island, Little St. James Island. He had very powerful people that would fly on his planes. Yep. He was a known pedophile. Even with the recent, I don't know if you saw, but Harvey Weinstein got sentenced to 23 years. Yeah. And he was, doing that with adult women. Yeah. But I believe there's like in MLB, there's a farm system when you pull up like recruits or like So there's almost like a farming system, particularly in Hollywood, for people, young men and women, to get brought in, and they get turned over to these depraved men that abuse them, and then they trade that for star power. And everybody knew about Weinstein. Everybody knew. John McCain's wife said that everybody knew what Epstein was doing. And nobody did anything to stop. That's just conspiracy hole, just to kind of close that up real quick. So, like I said, going in this particular topic, we kind of wanted to talk about not just like one topic like pedophilia or, the conspiracy theories or whatever.
Which we love. Yeah, we talk conspiracy theories quite a bit.
Which we'll have some more episodes where we really get into those. But just, like we both mentioned, we kind of, instead of talking about just like one topic like pedophilia or these conspiracy theories, we want to also be able to talk about something a little, more widespread.
Yeah, just the
rape things like
nominal. I think nominal is a good word. Yeah. Nominal sexual abuse.
Yeah. So, I mean, and obviously, like we said, like the word is clear. Do not devise evil. We mentioned that in a couple episodes ago. Do not devise evil in your heart against another.
Love is patient. Love is kind.
Yeah, yeah.
If you love this 6-year-old kid, wait till they're 18.
Yeah, if you love this adult, and that's actually a thing that happens. I mean, abuse happens even in married couples or relationships.
Yeah. What is it? Marital rape or inter something rape? But like, when married couples.
Yeah. I mean, and even domestic abuse. It's not even like rape or anything. It's just like violence against a family member. You know, that happens. So it's.
And none of it's godly.
No, absolutely not. I mean,
if you think that God gave you the ability to beat your wife because you're the man of the house, you're wrong. Hot take.
Yes, yeah, because actually, you are to lead in love. That's what the word says. So it's, these topics are heavy. So it's, but we want to be able to talk about them because these are things. Particular part of the reason we made this podcast is because not everybody talks about these certain things.
These things are not being addressed in the pulpit.
Yeah.
By your Sunday morning pastor.
Yeah, and I think that's okay.
That's fine.
I
don't really think that's his job to address it to the whole church. Maybe behind closed doors say something, but.
Yeah, here it is. I just wanted to pull that scripture up really quick. Ephesians 5:25, in relation to the
husbands, love your
wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself. And guess what? Jesus didn't beat the church.
No, he took the beating for the church.
Yeah. And then it says in 26 to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with water.
Don't beat her. Wash her.
And present, verse 27, and to present her to himself as a radiant church without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless.
That's right.
Blameless, And I think that's
marriage advice right there. Take a shower with your woman.
Yeah.
The Bible says to wash her.
To wash her. Well, it does
make her clean.
Yeah. Dang, that's good. Oh, that's good. Oh, man.
Again, marriage advice, not extramarital advice. In marriage.
But and I think that's part of now I hate this phrase because it's not, because they try to push us on just regular masculinity, but the toxic masculinity thing.
Yeah.
There are men out there that think that just because they're the man they can do what they want. You know what I mean? But it's not scriptural. It's not true.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys have latched on to something that if they're believers, or even just men in general, they've latched on to something that is not.
It's not true.
Not true. That's just not real. Not based in any sort of factual evidence or anything like that. Sorry. So just as far as I got some kind of rape statistics pulled up. And
Fun.
The United States is. Oh, it's not top 10. It is actually one thing I did kind of want to talk about. Sweden is the 6th highest country for rapes. Its number of incidents per 100,000 citizens. South Africa is first at 132.4. And then it's South Africa, Botswana, Lesotho, Swaziland, Bermuda, Sweden, Suriname, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Grenada. So it's there's predominantly third world countries in this list, and then popped in right there near the middle at 6 is Sweden, which I think is pretty interesting because for most recent history, Sweden has been known as just this peaceful country, that, that doesn't get in wars, that they're just nice people.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden, within the last probably 5-10 years.
Yeah, I'd say about 10 years.
They've rapidly in this particular statistic. I know violent crime has radically risen, and there's a reason for that. Particularly is because they've become more of an open borders type country.
Yeah, they let people in that don't really ascribe to their way of life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and so it's interesting to see that. I thought that. This country that's heralded as this wonderful place, is 6th on the list of rapes per capita per 100,000 citizens. Now that it equates to about 6,000 per year in Sweden.
Okay.
Now the United States has radically more as just a number of incidents.
Right, but percentage wise.
But yeah, per capita for 100,000 students is what we're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. We're at 14th. Now, because the population of Sweden's just over 10 million right now, the United States as of 2019 says is 329 million.
Yeah,
So but that equates to about 85,000 per year in the United States. Now, obviously, one is too many.
One is too many. Yes, of course.
So, but I think it's this particular number is this per 100,000 students is kind of good to have because. Well, I think it's interesting. I think it's good to know the per 100,000, and then also the just kind of total number. But yeah, there's quite a few number of rapes that don't go reported. Here it goes. Here it is. It's on the same site I was just on. So only 9% of rapists get prosecuted in the United States, and only 3% of rapists will spend a day in prison. So that means that about 97% of rapists in the United States will walk free, which, I mean, if you want to talk about failure of government to protect your citizens, that's a pretty big one. That these and now I will say it can happen to both sexes, but I think specifically what 35% of women worldwide have experienced some form of sexual harassment in their lifetime. And the majority of countries that have data available on rape report that less than 40% of women who experience sexual violence seek help. Less than 10% seek help from law enforcement. So I do want to say to any women out there watching, listening, please, if you have some sort of experience, do not be afraid to call help. Do not be afraid to call law enforcement. I know that the media particularly wants to make you think that there's some stigma around you being abused. I know quite a few police officers. I personally kind of have a story. It's not rape, but abuse that's recently happened to someone that I'm close with. That I'm very glad she reported it, and it particularly this person that did this to her was a police officer. But she reported this, and then of course other police have been handling that, taking care of it,
of course,
and they're in the process of getting ready to take him to trial and all that stuff. But supposedly this man had been doing this for quite some time to different women, and
just please seek help.
If absolutely, because you don't know what you're stopping when you do this. Because I mean, this guy could have very easily beat someone to the point of them dying. And so you don't know if you're stopping that, preventing that happening.
You're saving a life
from someone. And one other statistic here just says 70% of rape is committed by someone the victim knows. So again, it kind of goes back to like the grooming thing, like something that happens quite often, because these unfortunately depraved, wicked-minded people will come in and present themselves as acceptable, or
they'll lie to you.
Like what was his name? The guy that Zac Efron just played in that Netflix movie.
Bundy.
Was it Bundy? Yeah, he did these
Bundy
things, and he got away with them for a long time.
Bundy.
I mean, he was able to like escape. He was like in a courthouse and jumped out a window. And was able to escape.
It was a cool little scene. It'd be cool if it was Batman, I should say. It wasn't cool because it was. It wasn't cool because it was Bundy. Like bad Bundy. But like, I know he's talking like statistics and stuff. I saw one on here that said that 1 in 3 girls are sexually abused before the age of 18. 1 in 5 boys are sexually abused before the age of 18, and 1 in 5 children are solicited sexually while on the internet before the age of 18. So I know he's talking rape, but I mean even sexual assault. I mean on here I saw too. Nearly 70% of all reported sexual assaults, including assaults on adults, like rape, occur to children aged 17 and under. So the depravity part, we talk about the two different subjects of, pedophilia, child molestation, things like that, and rape as 2 separate subjects because they are in the eyes of the law. But, and so there's the country part. But to God, you're hurting someone, you're abusing someone, period.
Yeah. And
that's not how you're supposed to act. If you're, just being totally honest on the podcast, right? I don't know I don't know if I would ever be able to see someone. It would be a challenge. It would present a challenge to me if someone was a registered child sex offender and I needed to look at them in a particular situation through Jesus's eyes. That would be a situation that I don't know what I would do, and I would have to pray. So I know at the earlier in the episode I said, how should believers approach this, and from like just a national standpoint, the way that our society is going, listen to the Spirit, of course, but also if you're presented with somebody that is an abuser, or is an offender or whatever, pray about it. Because the Bible, like Daniel says, when it comes to condemning sin, the Bible is clear, but it's also clear when it talks about how we should act and how we need to respond to these things. So that's one of the main reasons why we have the podcast. So we can talk about how we're supposed to respond to things that aren't really being addressed Sunday morning.
Yeah. And these particular topics, I think, are kind of hard to address from the pulpit, because I think that's for the edification of the saints and growing in the church.
Right.
But these are things I think that specifically, even politics in general, as a topic, Christians should not be afraid to approach that topic.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there's been a complacency or a just a lack of desire to talk about this kind of stuff, for politics in general in the church, which is kind of, I think,
sad,
really allowed some of the things that are happening to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So you definitely speak out,
Absolutely.
Jesus, that's exactly what Jesus did when he came here. He went and flipped tables and called the priest the synagogue of Satan,
Oh yeah, you are of your father the devil. Yeah, I remember that. The synagogue of Satan.
Yeah, well, in Revelation 3:9, behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which they say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. And then what I was thinking about what Jesus said is, for you of your father the devil.
Right, because they were like, you say you're of your father, we know your dad.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh yeah, you know my dad, but you don't even know your own dad.
Yeah.
He's Satan.
Yeah. So it's so I mean, clearly, again, as I've kind of mentioned a couple times throughout the episodes, it's like if we're supposed to use Jesus as our example, what are we doing?
Boom.
Because we're obviously not doing enough. If there's kids that can go and just disappear, or if there's 85,000 rapes happening in America,
in your nation,
or even the 44% of lesbian women experience rape, violence, or whatever any of these statistics that we've talked about over the last 2 episodes. I always want to make a point that that the church has a responsibility to step up and do something about it.
Right.
And like you mentioned, the part of the problem, I believe, is that with most any problems that we have in the country, is mismanagement of government or mismanagement of funds, like
resources, the ability to address it.
Yeah. Like you mentioned, if you were supposed to had to try to look at somebody, who's a convicted sex offender through Jesus' eyes, it would be a little hard. I actually have a personal story where somebody I went to college with ended up having to register as a sex offender because he didn't do anything to this girl or anything, but he got caught up in a situation where this girl lied to him, told him she was 18. And then just eventually down the road, like her brother or her parents found text messages between them and reported them. He went through this whole ordeal. It was like on the news and everything.
God.
And it's just, and this guy particularly that I know is like one of the nicest dudes I've ever met.
And I mean, that kind of goes back to the government thing for me.
It's like a mismanagement thing. Because
that's that kind of circumstantial.
That's a situation where a guy that, kind of.
Of course, he broke the law. So.
I mean, he, and I tried to keep him away from it. Other people tried to keep him away from it. But, we had just graduated high school, so it's kind of easier for him to, I guess, go after a relationship like that or whatever. I don't know his personal thing about it. But he's now, for the rest of his life, considered a registered sex offender.
Yeah. Of course, I'm talking about like straight up, raping 5-year-olds.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that, but I think that's kind of like making it terribly. But the point I'm making is that, like, there's like this overabundance of, like, even nowadays with like the Me Too movement and all this stuff, there's a lot of like
rape
fake
culture.
Yeah, there's a lot of like fake accusations, and you can go and destroy. I mean, there's been I can't think off the top of my head, but I know a couple guys that were bound for the NFL got accused of rape, turned out to be fake, and then they wasted 5 years of their life and can't go make the millions of dollars they were going to make. You know what I mean? And so it's like a mismanagement of like government resources, and then also this overabundance of like media, and also like social media for everybody to just be the judge and the jury. It's everybody has the ability to just judge everything, and now in America particularly, they try to push this "you're guilty" until proven innocent thing.
Right.
It's that innocent until proven
Court
guilty.
of social media.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So it's tough nowadays, I think, but if the church, I believe, if the church were able to stand up and be more solid, be stronger, if the men in the church, stood up and led their families and raised godly kids, raised particularly godly boys, there would be a radical change.
You would see a change.
And what's going on. And there's a I kind of slightly mentioned it last episode. There's a huge fatherlessness issue in the country right now.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem, is that a lot of these kids aren't growing up with a father in the home, and they're missing out on having a righteous example of how to be a man, or how to even just be a person.
Right.
And I think obviously, because the enemy wants to split the family. And when you split the family, you see, obviously, all these problems that are starting to come up.
Yeah.
And these radical agendas, or even just violence, all this violence, this abuse that's happening. I think it has to start with the church for us to get in there.
Yeah.
And
of course, the Big C church, I mean, like, if you're a believer, as a believer, you have a responsibility to shine. Jesus said you don't light a candle and put it under a bush.
Yeah.
When he said that, it was a metaphor for him. He doesn't light us on fire and then hide us. It's our responsibility to do something and change and kind of affect the darkness around us. And so, I mean, if you know somebody personally, reach out. If you don't, get involved. Find a way to get involved. Just if it's just helping somebody who's going through the foster care system, or helping a victim in recovery. I mean, whatever you can do, everybody can do something. And you're not going to be beholden to your family. You're going to be beholden to Jesus.
Yeah.
So, who shined for everybody. So you just got to make sure that you're doing something. So, as normal with this podcast, Daniel always is like, Jesus did this, that, and the other. What are you doing? So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and get out of here. So glad that you joined us on episode 6 of the God and Country podcast. You can connect with us on social media, as I said earlier, at GNC Pod, GNC like the vitamin store, GNC Pod on Instagram, Facebook. One day we'll get a Twitter. And be sure to follow us on YouTube if you don't already. Subscribe, click the like button, and give us some feedback. You can also find us on RisenWordMinistries.com, rsnwrd.com. And I mean, is there anything else you wanted to say, Daniel, about all this heavy stuff? Anything?
Well, real quick. YouTube, we are under the Risen Word Ministries channel right now.
Yes, so currently we are. Episodes. Yeah, currently if you go to YouTube, you can type in God and Country Podcast and it'll come up. But you can also look for the whole channel, Risen Word Ministries, RSNWRD, GNC Pod. I mean, you can connect to that. So
Facebook, I don't have Facebook, so he's the one that controls all that.
Yeah, I'm thinking about getting rid of Facebook for the podcast anyway.
I haven't had it for like 4 years.
It's not a conversation for the podcast.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah. So as far as like this topic goes, again, I want to. I've kind of already said it, but I want to put a call out to the church and to believers that stand up, and fight. I kind of said a little bit about that on the episode about education. I don't hate to quote him, but Gandhi said, if you want to see change in the world, be the change you want to see, or something.
You hate to be
that.
cliche.
Yeah. But I think that's pretty relevant, especially with what the church is supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
The church really has, unfortunately, I mentioned before, has become complacent, and the church has missed out on our opportunity to do something about some of these situations, and so the world has to try to take care of it. But the world is the world, so the world's not. They're operating
in darkness.
Yeah, the enemy's not going to do anything to prevent. He's not going to go and fight himself. Yeah, he's going to just pump it up. Right. And so we're the front lines, I guess, to protect the world and people. Yeah. Maybe even people or people you love, that have gone through some of these experiences. And
restore them.
Yeah. And restore them, and that comes with first helping them know God.
Right.
Because that's he's our refuge, you know.
Right.
He's our hiding place.
We're not the fixer. The church isn't the fixer.
Yeah.
Jesus is the fixer.
Yeah, so. Exactly. But the church has to bring Jesus to,
right.
to the people. To
right.
the world.
How will they believe unless someone tells them?
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. And then the goodness of God leads people to repentance. And we have to be the goodness of God to people. And this particular topic comes with being able to speak up and say something.
That's right.
And do something. And like Ethan said earlier, you know, if you have these checks in your spirit,
follow them
about topics. Yeah, follow them.
Bro.
And make sure you have to be able to get a check in your spirit.
Ooh.
You know, you have to stay in the Word.
Yep.
You have to pray.
Yep.
One particular thing for me is I think worship is also super important.
Absolutely.
To just have communion with God, know how God speaks to you and talks to you, so you can recognize those checks when He gives them to you. Because it's not going to. I mean, sometimes you might just pass it off as a funny feeling in your stomach or something, you know. But
people are pressuring you to, let the kid perform or leave the kid with somebody.
It could definitely, that could be the Lord saying, "Hey,"
it could be a serious inconvenience. To give up the babysitter.
So as always we say, just be in the Word, pray, talk to God about this.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out how He's calling you to do something about this particular topic, and
that's right. And I think I'll close it out with this. On God and Country, at Risen Word, as believers, the churches that we go to here in the southern Houston area, if you deal with pedophilic, whatever, if you have thoughts about pedophilia, if you're dealing with child pornography or something like that, look, we don't hate you, right? We don't, we're praying for you just like we pray for everyone that God tells us to, and He tells us to pray for everyone that's in darkness and reach out to them with light, and that comes first by praying. And so we're not really, we don't want to condemn anyone of ourselves. We want to share what the Word has to say. We want to give you facts, and we just kind of want to go on from there. So no hate, a lot of love, but love isn't going to let you just go blindly into the dark night, right? So want to let you know the truth. The truth is that God loves you. Thanks for joining us on the God and Country podcast. Daniel, Ethan, out, because we're cool like that. Peace out. I'm just kidding.
Out.
I'm just kidding. We're out of here.